What happens when a pilot who can hear the sky better than any radar challenges the command? First, he is stripped of his flying privileges, and then it is his hearing that saves the entire coastal fleet. Let me tell you something they never printed in the papers, never put on the radios, and sure as hell never taught in any officer school. You don't win a war by following orders. You survive it by hearing what others refuse to listen to. Even if that sound is the enemy's engine, screaming through the clouds like a ghost looking for its next victim. My name is Thomas Hale, pilot, Royal Air Force, 605th Squadron, American-born, Mississippi-raised, and yes, black, volunteered before Roosevelt even blinked. I wasn't fighting for politics. I was fighting because I knew what silence cost. I grew up in a house where my father fought 2 wars every day, one at the shipyard, and the other at the dinner table, wondering if we'd make it through the week. And even back then, I listened more than I talked. So when I say I heard a Messerschmitt before I saw it, believe me, I ain't trying to sound mystical. I'm just telling you what happened. It started with a favor, ain't it always? I'd been flying for just under a year, racked up more hours in a Spitfire than some of those fancy boys with clean boots and polished voices. But I kept my mouth shut. You learn that real early when your uniform doesn't match your skin. Speak only when spoken to, unless lives depend on it. And that morning I figured they did. We were sitting through the usual mission briefing, early fog still pressing down on the hangars at RAF Croydon, rain tapping on the tin roof like fingers counting down to something ugly. Captain Broughton, sharp jaw, clipped tone, zero imagination, was walking us through the intercept. "They'll be coming in from the east," he said, pointing at the blackboard with a stick like he was teaching a bunch of schoolboys. "Probably Ju 88s, standard run. You'll go up in 2 flights. Tight formation. Engage on visual confirmation only." I raised my hand. He paused. That pause. It wasn't just surprise. It was disbelief. Like the wrench had suddenly asked a question in the toolbox. "Yes, Hale?" "Sir," I said, steady, respectful. "Visibility's low. Radar's patchy. If we wait to see 'em, they might already be over London. I can hear them before that. I've done it before." Broughton blinked once, then twice. The room went quiet. Not just quiet, tense. Like every man suddenly remembered who I was, and more importantly, who I wasn't. "You suggesting we fire without visual confirmation?" he asked. "I'm suggesting we don't get caught with our boots down, sir." He smiled. The kind of smile you give a dog that just barked at your dinner table. "Noted," he said. "Stick to orders, Flight Officer Hale. Leave the tactics to those trained to lead." The briefing ended 5 minutes later. I stayed seated until the room emptied. Not because I was stunned, because I was mad. The kind of mad that sits in your throat like a hot stone. Captain Downing came over, quiet as always. A good man. One of the few who didn't look at me like I was a wild card in the deck. "You all right?" he asked. "Been worse," I said. "You sure you heard them last week?" "I heard them. Tracked them, radioed them in. If we'd moved 30 seconds sooner, Simmons wouldn't be in traction." He nodded. Didn't argue, didn't agree. Just nodded, like a man watching a train he couldn't stop. The runway was soaked. Mud at the edges, slick like oil. We rolled out in 2 flights. Tight, textbook, as ordered. I was tailing Charlie because of course I was. Not that I minded, I preferred the edge. More air, more thinking room. Once we hit the clouds, the world disappeared. No sun, no landmarks. just gray soup thick enough to chew. My eyes were useless, but my ears, I heard it. Low, sharp, slicing through the drone of our own engines like a whisper through a prayer. A pitch too high for a bomber, too fast. That was no Junkers. That was a fighter. A damn Messerschmitt. Alone or maybe scouting. I keyed the mic. Flight 1. Possible contact bearing 10. Sounds like fast single prop. Advise caution. Silence. Then Broughton's voice. Hail, stay in formation. No deviation. No deviation. So I deviated. Dropped throttle, slid out of formation like a ghost slipping through a picket fence. My gut said left. My ears said climb. I did both. Then I heard it again, louder, closer, moving past. I rolled right, hard, and caught a glimpse. Sleek, silver-gray with a cross on the wing and a bite in its tail. I squeezed the trigger. The guns rattled. Brief flash. And then, nothing. No explosion, no fireball, just silence. And that's how I knew I hit him. Because silence like that, it doesn't just happen. It drops like a curtain, final, heavy, permanent. Back on the ground, the rain had eased, but the air was thicker than ever. Broughton was waiting, arms crossed, lips thin. You broke formation. Yes, sir. You claim a kill? No visual confirmation, I said, but engine noise ceased after engagement. He stared at me, a long, hard stare. The kind that doesn't ask questions, just judges. So, you shot down a German fighter? By sound? Yes, sir. He turned to the clerk. Mark as unconfirmed, and remove him from next sortie rotation. I should have said something then, should have fought back. But what was the point? The war wasn't just up there in the clouds, it was right here, in the briefings, the paperwork, the looks. And some battles you don't win by shouting. You win them by flying again, even when they don't want you to. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how deep this goes. Stay with me. You ever walk into a room and feel like the walls know your name, but not in a good way? That was the hangar the next morning. Folks weren't talking, but they were looking. Not just at me, through me, like I was already a ghost with boots on. Some nodded, a couple turned away, and a few, they just kept tightening bolts like I was a gust of wind blowing through the door. That's the thing about being right too early. Nobody thanks you for it. After the flight, after I said what I heard and did what I did, they grounded me. No official hearing, no reprimand. Just a quiet little line on the duty sheet. Flight Officer Hale. Stand by only. Stand by. I hadn't survived 24 night runs to be benched like some second-string rookie. I found Captain Downing later that day. He was alone near the edge of the tarmac, smoking the way some men pray. Eyes half closed, lips barely moving, like there was something sacred in the ritual. You really heard it? He asked before I even opened my mouth. I know what I heard, I said. More than that. I know what I felt. He didn't argue. That was the difference between him and the others. He didn't need proof drawn in smoke to believe fire existed. They say you broke formation. I say formation would have gotten someone killed. Downing nodded. Then he said something I didn't expect. I believe you. But that won't help you much around here. The funny thing is, I didn't ask for anyone's belief. I didn't need their applause or their medals. All I ever wanted was to keep us alive up there. But rules were rules, especially when they kept certain folks in their place. And let's be honest, I wasn't exactly the poster boy they wanted in the mess hall photos. The next few days dragged. I stayed in uniform, showed up for roll call, but they kept me out of the cockpit. I was assigned to equipment checks, which was a polite way of saying, "We're not sure what to do with you, but we don't want you making noise." I walked the line of Spitfires every morning, ran diagnostics, listened to engines like I was tuning a jazz record. And I'll tell you, there's something about machinery. It doesn't lie to you, doesn't care what you look like, where you come from, or how many stars sit on your shoulder. It either runs right, or it doesn't. People, not so simple. On the fourth day, something shifted. There was a new name on the board, Rodney Ellis, fresh from training, fast promotion, son of someone most likely. He was younger than me by 5 years and had the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. I met him that morning by Hangar B. His handshake was strong, his grin even stronger. "Heard you flew solo into a cloud bank and shot down a ghost," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Heard you fly like you read about it in a brochure," I replied. That grin faltered, just a little. He was quick to laugh, though. "Guess we'll see whose version sticks." The next mission came fast. High alert, Luftwaffe pushing inland again. Word was they were testing our radar gaps, the kind of mission where seconds matter and maps become suggestions. Ellis got the lead, I got the bench. Again. I watched from the tower, saw the planes rise, all clean wings and steel nerves, heard the chatter over the radio. Normal stuff. Until it wasn't. About 20 minutes into the flight, static hit. Then silence. Then chaos. "Where the hell are they coming from?" "I don't see 'em. Check your right. Check your right." Too late. One plane didn't return. Not Ellis. One of the veterans. And when they landed, the air was different. Heavy. Not from grief, from realization. Ellis stormed into the debrief red in the face. They came in low under the scan. We never heard them until it was too late. Downing looked at him, then he looked at me. That's when I knew the tide had turned. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of what happened, but because I knew it didn't have to happen. I had warned them. I had heard it. They didn't listen. Not the first time. Maybe now? The next morning I reported early, just in case. Downing met me at the edge of the hangar. "You're flying today," he said. "Official orders came in at dawn." "Who signed it?" "Me." I paused. "You'll take the heat for that." He lit his cigarette. "Heat's already here. Might as well cook something." I was back in the air an hour later. No parade. No announcement. But when I walked past Ellis, he didn't grin this time. He nodded. Small thing, but real. And that's what this war was, not just bombs and bullets. It was moments like that, little shifts in weight, a nod instead of a scoff, a flight order signed in ink that wasn't supposed to be used. I didn't need their cheers, just the chance to keep flying. Because when you're up there, when it's just you, the clouds, and the hum in your gut, that's where the truth lives. This was just the tip of the blade. The next chapter, that's where things cut deep. Stay with me. It's about to get real. This story is just beginning. If you're interested in how a pilot who didn't see the target but heard the victory will cope with the system, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation. And write in the comments, would you trust your ears when the whole world demands you use only your eyes? Your response is important. It brings stories like this to life. They called it Routine Recon A7. That's how it was written on the chalkboard in the flight room. Plain, dry, government script. Nothing special. Just a dusty white line in a room that smelled like wet wool, diesel, and coffee that had been reheated one too many times. But there was nothing routine about what came next. The weather was mean that morning, the kind of gray that pressed down on your shoulders like a barbell. The sky wasn't open, it was closed and waiting, and when the wind pushed across the field, it didn't whisper, it shoved. Hard. Still, we suited up. No questions, no chatter. Just the ritual, boots, harness, gloves, mask. I'd done it enough times that my hands worked before my mind did, like my bones remembered faster than my brain. I walked out to my Spitfire, same bird, same markings, same seat worn in like an old church pew. She wasn't new, she wasn't pretty, but she knew me and I knew her. That counted more than stripes on a shoulder. The ground crew gave me a once-over. One of the mechanics, Harold, passed me a thumb up and said, "If she coughs, talk nice to her." I nodded. I always do. The mission was simple on paper. Patrol a corridor between Kent and the Channel. Report movement. Engage only if fired upon. We were paired, 2 flights of 2. I was with Ellis. Yeah, that Ellis, the boy wonder with the polished boots and quick hands. I'll give him this. He flew clean. Tight turns, smooth throttle. But he flew with his eyes, not his ears. That's fine when the sun's up and the sky's polite. But this wasn't one of those days. 10 minutes into the patrol, we hit a pocket of turbulence that felt like a bad mood from God. The clouds came fast, thick as smoke. Visibility dropped to near zero. The kind of nothingness that makes you check if your eyelids are open. Ellis's voice crackled through the radio. "Hale, I'm pulling up to reposition. Keep eyes sharp." "Copy," I said, though what I wanted to say was, "You won't see 'em in this fog, kid." Then it happened. Not a flash, not a bullet. A sound, low, heavy, guttural, an engine, damaged. Not ours. I knew it before my heart caught up. Not like the purr of our Merlins. This was coarse, offbeat, like a man trying to run with a broken leg. A German Heinkel, maybe, or a Dornier limping back home. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it coming through the clouds like a warning. I broke formation. Again, I dropped throttle, turned left, climbed half a degree. Just enough. Ellis called out. "Where are you going?" "Something's there," I said. "Visual?" "No, but I hear it." He cursed under his breath, polite, controlled, then said, "Stay in range." I wish I could tell you what I saw first, but I didn't see it. Not yet. What I felt was the shift in air pressure, the sudden tug at my gut. Something big, close. The engine noise was getting louder now, but not steady. Wounded, staggered, the hum of desperation. And then it tore out of the cloud like a ghost kicked from heaven. Twin engines, crosses on the wings, belly loaded heavy with bombs, and smoke trailing one side like a finger tracing regret through the sky. I reacted, thumb to trigger. Cannons barked. The first burst missed. Second, clipped the right engine. Third, dead center. The bomber didn't explode. No Hollywood fireball. It just shuddered, slowed, then started to tip. One of the crew inside tried to bail. I saw the hatch open, but they were too low, too late. The plane dropped back into the clouds, spinning slow. Quiet. Just like that, the engine noise disappeared. Again. I rejoined Ellis 10 minutes later. He didn't say much. Just, "Did you get him?" "Yeah." "You saw him?" "No," I said. "I heard him." He didn't argue this time. Didn't smile, either. He just flew quiet. Back at base, they debriefed us. I filed the report like always. Gave coordinates. Described the sound. Marked the time. The man taking notes, some desk pilot with shoes too shiny for mud, blinked and said, You're saying you engaged without radar lock or visual? I'm saying I engaged when the enemy was there. He paused. Any confirmation from Ellis? He didn't see it. Then we can't confirm the kill. I nodded. Then don't confirm it. I stood up. But don't tell me it didn't happen. Later, in the mess, the room was a little less cold than usual. Ellis sat across from me. Trays clattered, forks scraped. Outside, rain hit the windows in a rhythm I almost found familiar. He leaned forward. That thing you said, about hearing it, he started. I waited. Do you actually train that, or is it just instinct? I looked at him for a long second. Then I said, You ever sit on a porch during a storm and know it's going to hit harder than the last one? Not because you see it, but because the air tastes different. He nodded slowly. Same thing. He didn't laugh, didn't doubt. And that was the beginning of something. That night I walked the hangar line again. Just me and the planes and the quiet. One of the mechanics was still working late. Said, Heard you got another one today. I shrugged. Depends who you ask. Well, he said, tapping the wing. She's got one less round in the left gun, so someone got told. I smiled. The kind that doesn't show teeth. Just truth. Because truth is, engines don't lie. Dead engines tell the truth louder than any officer ever could. We've barely scratched the surface. The next chapter, it's where everything comes to a head. You'll want to be there when it does. Stay with me. You'd think the hardest part of war was the flying. You'd be wrong. Flying. That's the honest part. You hear the engine, feel the wind, press the trigger, and either you come back or you don't. It's simple. Not safe, but simple. What grinds you down isn't the sky. It's the men sitting behind desks, polishing their pens like sabers, fighting a different kind of war. The paper war. And believe me, that one's colder than a December hangar. The morning after my second unconfirmed kill, I was called into command. Not the usual debrief room with metal chairs and bad coffee. No, this one had carpet. Real carpet. Smelled like cigars and old books. Like a room where people wore uniforms but never sweated in them. Squadron leader Howarth sat behind the desk. I'd only seen him twice before. Once during an inspection, once in a group photo he didn't know I wasn't in. Flight Officer Hale, he said without looking up. I stood at ease. Not because I was relaxed, but because you don't stand at attention for a man who doesn't meet your eyes. He flipped through a folder. My folder. You've had a pattern, he began. I said nothing. Let him talk. 2 engagements, 2 claimed kills. No visual confirmation, no radar, no witnesses, no gun camera footage. He leaned back, hands folded. I'm aware of your service, your hours, your conduct, but this puts us in a difficult position. I raised an eyebrow. With respect, sir. Difficult how? Morale, for one. Structure. Discipline. He paused. Perception. Ah, there it was. The word they never said out loud but always circled. See, when you don't fit the mold, every win looks suspicious. Every success feels like a problem someone has to explain. He stood up. We're reassigning you, temporarily, to training command. That hit harder than flak. Training? I repeated. You'll be instructing rookies, engine acoustics, maneuver tactics, ground sim work. It's a valuable role. I stared at him. Long, quiet. It's a demotion, I said flat. He didn't deny it. It's necessary. Necessary for who? They grounded me that afternoon. I wasn't even allowed to walk the tarmac. Like my boots might contaminate the routine. Ellis caught me outside barracks, jacket slung over his shoulder. He looked confused. Mad, maybe, but not at me. "They pulled you?" he asked. "Training command," I said. "Effective immediately." "That's—" He stopped himself. I waited. He didn't finish the sentence. The next 3 days were quiet. Too quiet. I ran drills with green pilots who still wore the stiffness of academy starch. Taught them how to hear the pitch change of an engine under stress, how to listen for a dive before it breaks cloud, how to trust the air the way you trust your heartbeat. They listened, not because I had stripes, but because I knew. One of them, Lancaster, I think, asked me, "Sir, why aren't you still flying?" I smiled. "Ask the folks with the pens." On the 4th day I got a visitor, Downing. He didn't say much, just handed me a memo folded twice. Subject: Flight Officer Hale, operational reinstatement pending review. "Pending," I said. "Technically, not a no," he replied. I laughed, short, dry. He looked around the training lot, then leaned in. "Listen," he said, "there's chatter." "What kind?" "Command's nervous, not just about you, about what you represent." "What, ears?" "No, change." That evening I was in the hangar again. Old habit. A couple of the ground crew passed by, nodded. One tossed me a wrench. "Bird's been growling. Thought you might translate." I ran my hand along the side of the Spitfire. The metal was cold, but it hummed. Faint. Alive. "I ever tell you what an engine sounds like just before it stalls?" I asked. The younger mechanic shook his head, like a man clearing his throat before saying something he'll regret. They laughed, but I wasn't joking. The next morning it all snapped. Not in the sky, in the office. The daily bulletin went up, and there it was. Effective immediately. Flight Officer Hale is relieved of flight duties indefinitely. No hearing, no reason, just a line on paper. Ellis read it before I did. He came into the locker room, holding the bulletin like it was a mistake he could erase. "They can't do this," he said. "They just did. This is wrong." I looked at him, not with anger, with the kind of calm that comes when you've seen enough of the world to stop being surprised. "They're not mad that I shot something down," I said. "They're mad I did it without their permission." He sat down hard on the bench. "This whole system wasn't built for people like me," I finished. That night I packed up my locker. No ceremony, no send-off. Just me, my boots, and the sky outside turning from gray to black like a curtain falling on a play. No one clapped for. As I walked past the airfield, I heard engines warming up, same as always. But something felt different. Not in the sky. In me. Because no matter how many reports they filed, how many titles they stripped, they couldn't silence the one thing that had kept me alive this long. I could still hear the war coming, and I wasn't done listening. This chapter hit hard, but it's not over. In the next part, what they tried to bury will rise louder than ever. Stay with me. It's about to break wide open. You can ground a man, sure. You can scratch his name off a flight sheet, lock up his flight suit, even shut off the radio that carried his voice. But you can't stop a sound once it's in the air. And what they didn't realize, what they never understood, was that I wasn't the one making noise. The truth was, a week after they pulled me off flight duty for good, I was still showing up every morning. Not out of pride, not out of spite, out of something deeper, something quiet that sits in your chest and says, "You're not finished." Downing told me not to bother. "You're not on the rolls, Hale." I know. "You're not even on reserve." I know that too. Then why? Because I still hear it. He didn't argue, just walked away with that look grown men give each other when no words are left to fix things. Ellis kept his distance for a few days, not out of fear, out of respect, I think, like he was letting the smoke clear. But on the fourth day, he showed up at the training shed, holding a clipboard and a rolled-up chart like a man carrying bad news dressed up in official paper. "They're putting me on a solo recon," he said. "North corridor." I nodded. "Low visibility. Radar's acting up again." I waited. He unfolded the chart and pointed. "This section here. You ever get weird readings?" "Not readings," I said. "Sounds. Cold air changes how the engines echo off the cliffs. Tricks the radar boys." He studied my face. "I want you in the tower when I'm up. I'm not on the roster. You don't need to be." That was the first time someone said it out loud, that I didn't need permission to be useful. When Ellis took off that morning, the weather was already turning. Thin fog at ground level, thickening fast over the coast. By the time he hit altitude, half the channel had vanished under a sheet of silver. From the tower, I stood behind the comms desk, not touching anything, just listening, static. Then his voice, visibility dropping, still clear on radar. Another voice, dry and official. Maintain heading, report visual contact only. Visual again, always visual, like the enemy was going to send a postcard first. Then came the sound, not over the radio, through the air, low, fast, wrong. I stepped forward. "Do you hear that?" I asked the comms officer. He shrugged. "Could be echo, wind, Doppler bounce." "No," I said. "That's not wind, that's metal cutting air. Something small, sharp." The officer looked at me like I was speaking jazz in a room full of brass bands. I leaned into the mic. "Ellis, you got a shadow." Pause. Then, "Negative, nothing visual." "Doesn't matter. He's there. You need to dive 5 degrees, now." More silence, and then I heard it. The burst of engine torque. He was diving. 10 seconds later. "Contact confirmed. 2 o'clock. The transmission cut. A new voice shouted, "He's taking fire." I turned and ran out of the tower. By the time I reached the field, 2 birds were scrambled. One was downing, the other a replacement pilot I hadn't met yet. Young, pale. They were up in 3 minutes flat. What followed was chaos, controlled, surgical chaos. Orders barked, engines roared, radio channels flooded with overlapping voices, some clear, some clipped. And through all of it, I stood still. I closed my eyes and listened. The pitch of a dive, the whine of a Messer banking hard, the sputter of a Spitfire bleeding fuel. All of it wove together like a symphony written in danger and steel. Then came the sharp pop, not an explosion, a stall. Then 2 more, and then silence. They came back one by one. Ellis was last. His canopy was cracked. His right wing looked chewed up like a dog had taken a bite out of it. But he landed smooth. When he climbed out, he didn't speak, just walked straight toward me, stopped inches from my face. "You saved me," he said. "I listened." He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The next day, something wild happened. The mechanics started asking me questions, not the usual "what's wrong with the gauge" kind. Real questions. How do you tell the Messer's climb from a Spitz in heavy air? What does a dive sound like when it's panicked? Can you teach us what you hear? I didn't have a classroom, didn't need one. I started writing it down. Not theories, not tech specs. Sounds, feelings, the shape of danger in the air. Then came the brass. Squadron leader, Howarth, The same man who buried me under paperwork 2 weeks earlier called me back into his office. This time he stood. "Flight Officer Hale," he said, "I've been informed of your contributions." "Contributions," I repeated. "Yes, your recent assistance with Flight Officer Ellis has raised interest." He cleared his throat. "There's a proposal to incorporate sound-based tracking analysis into recon training." He didn't say thank you. He didn't apologize. But he handed me a folder, and that folder said one thing: Instruction Lead, Advanced Acoustic Pattern Recognition, Temporary Assignment, with flight privileges. I didn't grin, didn't raise a fist, didn't even blink, just said, "So, back in the air?" "For now," he replied. That night, Ellis and I walked the flight line. The wind was soft, the sky clear. He asked me, "You ever get tired of fighting the same battle twice?" I shook my head. "Nah, I get tired of pretending the first one's over. Because here's the truth. Planes break, radios fail, radar gets blind in the fog. But sound tells you what's coming before it arrives, and people, they can ignore you, block you, silence you. But they can't unhear the truth once it's in the air." This chapter gave them a choice. What came after? That was a reckoning. The next, manned final part, is where the truth flies loud and clear. Do not miss it. You'd think that after everything, the arguments, the grounding, the quiet nods passed like secret handshakes in the hangar, they'd just let it lie. But systems like this don't forget. They don't just let men like me walk back in without a leash. So when they handed me that folder, Temporary Assignment with Flight Privileges, I knew it was never meant to last. Not really. Not unless I did something they couldn't walk back. Something they'd have to file under necessary instead of tolerated. Turns out, war gives you chances to do just that. The mission came coded: Eagle Recon Alpha Zulu. Sounded harmless, sounded like paperwork. But when Downing briefed me, not in the hall, not in front of brass, but out by the generator shack where the wind covered our words, I understood what it really was. The bombers are coming from deep. No escort. Radar's spotty, but intel says they'll cross right through our corridor. "And they want us to find them?" I asked. "They want you to hear them first." I looked at him. "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who hears what others ignore, and we're out of guesses." They gave me Ellis as wingman. Smart move. By now, the man flew as sharp as he listened. He didn't second-guess me anymore. Not after last time. We launched just after 0500. Sky dark, air thick, clouds hung low like the sky hadn't made up its mind yet. Felt like flying into memory. At 6,000 feet, everything disappeared. No land, no water, just gray. Radio crackled. Ellis on my 6. Quiet, focused. I closed my eyes. Not for long, just enough to tune in. And there it was, that low growl, distant, heavy, steady. Not a fighter, not one. A group. Could have been wind, but it wasn't. Could have been imagination, but I knew better. I banked left. Slow, no call-out, just instinct. Ellis followed without a word. 2 minutes later, we broke cloud, and there they were. A full German bomber wing, flying low, fast, headed straight for the southern coast. No radar had caught them, no lookout had spotted them, but the air had remembered. "Target acquired," I called. "Multiple bombers, low altitude. Coordinates transmitting now." Control confirmed. Scramble order issued. Reinforcements were coming. But we were already there. Ellis locked left. I took right. We hit fast. No speeches, no hesitation. It wasn't clean, it wasn't textbook. But it was real. Gunfire lit up the sky like angry stars. I tagged the lead bomber's wing. Ellis clipped the tail of the second. One started to drift, smoking hard. Another burst into fire and peeled away. We danced between them like threads through a needle, and through it all I heard them, even over the gunfire, even through the wind. Every change in pitch, every groan of failing metal, every heartbeat from an engine too tired to make it home. The others arrived 5 minutes later. They cleaned up what we started, and when we landed, the runway was already lined with people who knew. Not just the mechanics or the tower crew, not just the ground officers or brass. Everyone. Word travels faster than bullets in places like that, especially when what you heard saved a whole coast from burning. Squadron Leader Howarth was waiting at the edge of the field, not in his office, not behind glass, in the mud, in the open. He didn't say much, just, "We logged 7 confirmed kills, 2 unconfirmed, 2 diversions, 1 critical interception." I nodded. Heard them coming. He looked at me then. Really looked. "For what it's worth," he said, "this changes things." I didn't smile, didn't offer a handshake, just said, "Let's hope the paper folks agree." A week later, I was back on the flight board. Not temporary, not trial, full status. Flight Officer Hale, Combat Reconnaissance Lead. They didn't throw me a parade, but every pilot who walked past that board looked up, then looked at me, and nodded. The kind of nod that said, "You did it the hard way," and we saw it. They started sending trainees to me, green boys with fast eyes and louder mouths. I taught them how to listen, not just with ears, with everything, to fly like you could feel the air think. Some picked it up, some didn't, but they all left different than they came. Ellis came by the hangar one evening, sun just kissing the horizon, engines sleeping. "You ever think this would happen?" he asked. "No. You ever stop hoping it might?" I thought about that. "No," he nodded. "Good." That night I walked the line of planes again, same as always. Put my hand on the metal, listened, still humming, still alive. And somewhere out there, beyond radar, beyond sight, the next sound was already coming. But I'd be ready, because the sky never forgets. And neither do I. This is where the noise finally got heard. If this story moved you, don't let it fade in silence. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe. We've got more truth to uncover, one unheard story at a time.